Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Summer Newman's life in Genoa City had always been a whirlwind of passion, treason, and unanticipated twists, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment she returned to city and stepped into the familiar yet pressure-filled halls of the Newman estate. The megacity buzzed with the usual whispers of power struggles, family feuds, and secret affairs, but for Summer, the weight of her own history had always been the heaviest burden she carried. She had returned not just for a transitory visit, but to defy moping questions about her identity, her family, and the complicated web of connections that had shaped her every decision. As soon as she walked through the frontal doors, the air sounded thick with expectation. Her mama, Phyllis Summers, sat poised in the grand living room, a knowing look in her eyes, the kind of expression that could only gesture that a secret, long buried, was about to surface. Summer's heart contended, the familiar knot of anxiety ringing in her stomach as she tried to guess what Phyllis might reveal this time. She had always tasted that her family held further secrets than she had ever been told, but nothing in her wildest imaginings could have prepared her for the disclosure that was about to shatter everything she allowed she knew. Phyllis, ever the master of timing and dramatic faculty, began sluggishly, her voice carrying the weight of verity and consequence. "Summer," she said, breaking for dramatic effect, "there's commodity you need to know, commodity that changes everything." Summer's palpitation quickened. She had returned to Genoa City to find herself, to reconnect with the family she allowed she knew, but now, all of that certainty was worsening before her eyes. The room sounded to close in, the air heavy with anticipation as Phyllis continued, each word striking like lightning. "The man you've always called your father, well, it turns out he's not your natural pater." The words hung in the air, a blaring silence following, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Summer's mind spun, trying to comprehend the counter-accusations. She had grown up knowing her father, trusting in the man she had believed was her anchor in the chaotic world of Genoa City, and now that foundation was being ripped down. "What do you mean, Mom?" she asked, her voice pulsing, a admixture of fear and disbelief. Phyllis's eyes softened, pigmented with guilt and motherly concern. She knew the stunner she was about to drop would leave Summer reeling, but the verity, she realized, could no longer remain retired. "Nick Newman, he's your natural father." The words landed with the force of a hurricane. Summer sat, unbelief etched across her face. Nick Newman, the important, changeable, and frequently ruthless primogenitor of one of Genoa City's most influential families, was her real father. The disclosure was seismic. Every piece of her life, every memory of love, hurt, and treason, now had a new lens, a new, complicated verity. Summer's mind contended. Could it really be true? Nick Newman? Her father? The study was nearly surreal. The history between her mama and Nick was fraught with pressure, love, deception, and contest, and yet, then she was, being told that the connection ran deeper than she had ever known. Questions collided in her head, each one sharper than the last. How had Phyllis kept this secret for so long? Why now, after all these times, reveal the verity? And most importantly, what did this mean for Summer herself, for her sense of identity, and for the formerly tumultuous life she led in Genoa City? The room sounded to blur around her as she tried to absorb the news. Memories of her nonage flashed before her eyes, the moments she had participated with the man she had always believed was her father, the assignments, the love, the occasional bummers, each now filtered through a prism of query. Could she ever look at him the same way again? Could she attune the man who had raised her with the natural reality that now hung over her like a storm pall? Phyllis, seeing the storm of feelings raging across Summer's face, reached out, her hand swimming hesitantly in the air before settling on her son's shoulder. "I know this is a lot, Summer, I know it's shocking," she said vocally. "But you earn to know the verity. You earn to know who you really are." Summer shook her head, gashes brimming in her eyes, the admixture of wrathfulness, confusion, and treason nearly inviting. "All these times you kept this from me?" she rumored, the words slightly audible, yet loaded with every ounce of pain and unbelief she felt. Phyllis jounced, a gash slipping down her impertinence. "I wanted to tell you sooner. I truly did. But circumstances, life, it just at no way sounded like the right moment." Summer's mind was a whirlwind. Nick Newman, her natural father. The weight of that disclosure settled over her like a crushing drift. Genoa City, a megacity that thrived on secrets and shocking twists, had no way sounded further volatile. However, it would shake the foundations of the Newman family, the veritably fabric of power, if word of this got out. Summer's study of Nick, the man she had encountered in colorful capacities over the times, the businessman, the father to others, the occasionally villain, occasionally idol of the family saga. How would he reply to this disclosure? How would it review their relationship? And what about her own passions toward him, toward the father she no way truly knew but whose blood ran through her modes? Her heart pounded with expectation, fear, and curiosity all at formerly. Summer's aspect shifted back to Phyllis, her mind spinning with the possibilities and ramifications of this shocking verity. So what does this mean for us? For me? She asked, her voice slightly steady. Phyllis took a deep breath, bracing herself for the storm that was about to hit, knowing sharp well that the fate of this concession would ripple through every corner of Genoa City. It means, Summer, that everything you allowed. You knew about yourself, about your family, it's about to change. But you're stronger than you realize. And I'll be then, every step of the way, to help you navigate it. Summer swallowed hard, trying to undergird her racing heart, but the verity was a tidal surge that couldn't be contained. Nick Newman, her father, her natural link to one of the most important men in Genoa City, was now a part of her in a way she had no way anticipated. The megacity outside the Newman estate sounded to break, as if seeing the seismic shift in its most prominent family. Genoa City would no way be the same, and neither would Summer. The emotional turbulence within her imaged the stormy sky over, each pall heavy with the weight of secrets, falsehoods, and exposures. As Phyllis watched her son absorb the news, she knew the hardest part was yet to come, the ineluctable battle with Nick, the questions, the feelings that would burst forth like a levee breaking. Summer, meanwhile, felt a strange blend of fear, wrathfulness, and unanticipated curiosity. She had always defined herself by her mama's choices, her own jests, and her relationship with the father she had grown up knowing. But now, a new chapter signaled, one filled with query, pressure, and the pledge of discovery. Summer's fetters quivered as she reached for the nearest president, resting herself, trying to reuse the avalanche of emotion that hovered to consume her. She allowed of the time she had spent navigating the unfaithful waters of Genoa City politics, family fidelity, and particular ambition, and wondered how this disclosure would shift her place within that intricate shade. Phyllis, seeing the intensity of the moment, spoke again, her voice gentle yet firm. Summer, you have the power to decide how this changes you. You can embrace it, learn from it, or indeed let it challenge you. But one thing is certain, you aren't the same Summer you were history. You're stronger, wiser, and now connected in ways you no way imagined. The words reverberated deeply within Summer, an admixture of consolation and challenge. She realized that while the news was shocking, it also offered a new perspective, a chance to review herself, her connections, and her understanding of family. The study of facing Nick, of eventually defying the man whose blood flowed through her modes, was dispiriting, but also oddly exhilarating. Summer knew that the path ahead would be fraught with battle, emotional bouleversement, and conceivably indeed conflict, but she also tasted that the verity, as painful and destabilizing as it was, had the power to set her free. Genoa City, ever the megacity of conspiracy, power, and reproach, had just witnessed another chapter in its ongoing saga of secrets and exposures. Summer Newman, now armed with the verity of her lineage, would no way be the same. Her connections with her mama, her musketeers, and her family would be tested in ways she had no way anticipated. The disclosure of Nick Newman as her natural father would ripple through the megacity like a shockwave, challenging commitment, kindling battles, and reconsidering the complex network of alliances and jaundice that had always defined her life. As Summer sat there, scuffling with the enormity of the news, she realized that this was further than just a particular disclosure, it was a turning point. The choices she made now, the way she embraced or defied this verity, would shape her future in Genoa City, a megacity where secrets were currency, and identity was power. The moment stretched on, heavy with expectation, the silence pointed only by Summer's ragged breaths and Phyllis's quiet, probative presence. Genoa City, with all its drama, heartache, and unanticipated twists, had no way felt more alive, or more dangerous. Summer's mind contended, her feelings a tempest of unbelief, stopgap, fear, and determination. She knew that defying the man she had just learned was her father would be ineluctable, that the Verity would demand recognition, and that her place in the Newman heritage had irrevocably changed. Phyllis, watching her son's metamorphosis in real time, felt a blend of pride and concern. The Verity was out, and now it was over to Summer to navigate the unfaithful waters ahead, fortified with knowledge, adaptability, and the imperturbable bond of family. Still complicated, that bond had come. Summer's eyes glistered with gashes, not just of anguish or wrathfulness, but of the profound consummation that her identity, her history, and her very future had shifted in a moment. Nick Newman, her father, her link to one of the megacity's most important patrimonies, was now an inarguable part of her story. And as the sun set over Genoa City, casting long murk over the Newman estate, Summer understood that life, as she knew it, would no way be the same again. This disclosure was further than shocking, it was transformative, a catalyst for growth, battle, and maybe indeed redemption. The megacity, in all its chaos and beauty, awaited her coming move, and Summer Newman, fortified with the Verity and the courage to face it, was ready to step into a new chapter of her life, a chapter defined by secrets revealed, power reclaimed, and the inarguable bonds of family tested and readdressed. Genoa City would no way forget this day. Summer herself would no way forget it. The disclosure of her natural father, Nick Newman, would ripple through every discussion, every alliance, and every battle yet to come. And as she took a deep breath, letting the weight of the Verity settle over her, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: her life, her choices, and her fortune had just changed ever. Summer sat in stupefied silence, the words "Nick Newman is your natural father" echoing through her mind like a grim shower. The room around her sounded fantastic, the familiar walls of the Newman estate suddenly foreign, as if the disclosure had cast a spell, reshaping her reality in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Her hands quivered, and for a moment, she couldn't indeed speak, her studies tumbling in chaotic, disconnected fractions. All those times of knowing herself, of defining her identity grounded on the man she had called Pater. The man who had raised her and loved her in his own way, now that foundation had been stripped down, leaving her vulnerable, confused, and unmoored. Phyllis, seeing the intensity of Summer's shock, moved closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I know it's inviting, Summer," she said vocally. "But you earn to know. You earn the Verity about who you are." Summer's aspect locked onto Phyllis, her eyes wide and glistering with unshed gashes. "Mama, why now? Why tell me after all these times?" Her voice bucketed with an admixture of wrathfulness, hurt, and disbelief. Phyllis swallowed, the weight of her own guilt pressing heavily against her casket. "It's complicated," she admitted. "There were reasons I allowed. I was guarding you. But secrets like this, they've a way of surfacing. And the Verity has a way of chancing its way out, whether we like it or not." Summer took a shaky breath, trying to reuse the magnitude of what she had just learned. She had always known Genoa City was a megacity of secrets and backstabbings, but nothing had prepared her for this position of particular bouleversement. Nick Newman, her father, the man who commanded power, respect, and fear in equal measure, was now a part of her in the most abecedarian way. The original shock began to give way to a storm of clashing feelings. Wrathfulness gurgled beneath the face, hot and pertinacious. How could Phyllis have kept this from her all these times? Every moment, every corner, every triumph, and disappointment had been framed by a taradiddle. And yet, there was a deeper, more complex subcast of emotion, curiosity, nearly glamorous in its pull. What did it mean to be Nick Newman's son? What secrets, power, and influence did that birth carry? Genoa City had always been a chessboard of power plays, and now Summer realized that she had been unwittingly dislocated on that board, her very identity reshaped by the disclosure of her lineage. Phyllis, watching the inner fermentation unfold across her son's face, took another deep breath. Summer, I suppose it's time you meet him, she said gently. Summer's eyes widened in unbelief. Meet Nick? Now? After all these times? Her voice quivered with an admixture of expectation and dread. Phyllis jounced, her expression both reassuring and anxious. Yes. I suppose you need to see him, to hear from him directly. The verity isn't just what I've told you, it's what he has to say, too. And I promise I'll be right there with you. Summer's mind contended. Meeting Nick Newman was dispiriting, frightening indeed. She had encountered him ahead, in colorful surrounds, business, family events, and occasional competitions, but this was different. This wasn't about commercial power or social appearances, this was about blood, about family, about a connection that was suddenly inarguable and irrevocable. The veritably allowed. Transferred her heart racing, her stomach wringing in knots. And yet, amidst the fear and query, there was a spark of commodity additional, a fragile, conditional stopgap that this meeting could bring clarity, check, or indeed a sense of belonging she had no way felt before. As Summer and Phyllis made their way to the Newman Manse's stately delineation room, the pressure in the air was palpable. The megacity outside sounded ignorant of the seismic particular drama unfolding within the estate's walls, the usual hum of Genoa city life continuing as if nothing had changed. But for Summer, nothing would ever be the same again. She entered the room, her way reluctant but determined, and there he was, Nick Newman. The important primogenitor, the man whose name carried weight in every corner of the megacity, now stood before her in a way that felt intimate, vulnerable, and yet commanding each at formerly. His eyes, sharp and assessing, softened as they fell on Summer, and for a moment, the weight of the moment sounded to suspend time itself. Summer, Nick said, his voice measured but pigmented with commodity deeper, commodity implied. I heard what Phyllis told you. I know this is a lot to take in. Summer swallowed hard, her voice slightly above a tail. You're my pater. The question was simple, yet heavy with every ounce of emotion she had been holding back. Nick jounced sluggishly, the corners of his mouth tight with controlled emotion. Yes. I'm your father. I've wanted to tell you for times, but circumstances complications I wasn't sure how. I wasn't sure if you were ready. Summer's mind reeled. Times of wondering, of questioning, of feeling disconnected from her own sense of tone, all crowned in this single, devastatingly profound verity. She wanted to feel wrathfulness, to lash out at the man who had been absent in this pivotal way, but she also felt commodity additional, and nearly glamorous pull toward him, a need to understand, to connect, to find some sense of identity in the face of this disclosure. The discussion that followed was violent, emotional, and fraught with the kind of raw honesty that could only do when times of secrets are eventually laid bare. Summer heated as Nick explained the circumstances girding her generality, the complications of his relationship with Phyllis, and the reasons why the verity had been kept hidden for so long. Each word landed with profound impact, reshaping her understanding of her own history and her place within the Newman heritage. And yet, amidst the explanations, there was in turnabout of vulnerability, a rare regard into Nick Newman as not just an important businessman, but as a man scuffling with the consequences of his choices, a man defying the liabilities of motherhood in a way he no way had ahead. Phyllis, observing the commerce, felt an admixture of relief and apprehension. She had done what she felt was right, revealing the verity, but she knew the trip ahead would be far from easy. Summer would need time to reuse, to grapple with the layers of emotion, and to navigate the ineluctable complications that would arise from this newfound verity. The bond between father and son, though recently revealed, would take time to make, and the challenges of Genoa City, its politics, battles, and power struggles, would only complicate matters further. Summer, meanwhile, felt a swell of clashing feelings. Wrathfulness, treason, curiosity, and a conditional sense of stopgap collided within her, creating a whirlpool of inner fermentation. She allowed. Of the man who had raised her, the father she had always known and loved, and the consummation that her identity had been shaped under a robe of secretiveness brought a sharp stitch of loss. And yet, she also honored an occasion, a chance to forge a relationship with Nick, to understand her roots, and to embrace the heritage she had intentionally carried within her each on. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotional reckoning. Summer navigated complex family dynamics, defying Victor, who was shocked and visibly shaken by the disclosure, and agitating with Phyllis the delicate balance of verity, fidelity, and domestic bonds. Genoa City, ever attuned to the fewest earthquake in the lives of its prominent families, began to stir with rumors, whispers, and enterprise. The disclosure of Nick Newman as Summer's natural father had only converted her particular reality but also transferred shockwaves through the megacity's social and commercial networks. Alliances shifted, commitment were tested, and the veritably fabric of the Newman family's influence was challenged as the counter-accusations of the disclosure gurgled outward.